Hello, everybody. My name is Jake Riffus, Sales Director of White Rabbit Intel. Not really going to do a lot of talking, mainly a couple questions here and there. Tim, kick it over to you.
Yeah, Tim Harris, Vice President of Marketing at Dial Source, and really enjoying the conversation around all this crazy stuff going on between sales and marketing. And so I market a product that helps sellers. So that's my connection to this whole game.
Nice. Ryan?
I'm Scott Leese. Sorry.
Go ahead, Scott.
Go ahead, Ryan. All right. I'm Scott Leese. Live in Austin, Texas right now, from the Bay Area originally. Founder of Surf and Sales, as well as my own consulting firm, and been a 6-time VP of sales in the startup community, and wrote a book called Addicted to the Process on selling. So been in this game for almost 2 decades now, as you can tell by the gray in my beard. I'm a little seasoned vet at this point.
You look good,
in time.
Scott.
Excited to be here. Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Ryan Reiser, I'm an arms dealer, weapons of mass conversation at Connect and Sell. I have been just excited about the top of funnel for the last 5 or 6 years. Prior to that, I led sales at several different venture-backed startups, 3-time VP sales, three exits, and also I've been a 3-time entrepreneur. And wrote a book on the top of funnel, and it's called Outbound Sales No Fluff. And love to help people who are trying to figure this out for the first time. That's really where I focus a lot of my time, energy, and effort on the fundamentals of the top of funnel. So really excited about this conversation.
Nice. And you also play the guitar, I see.
No, that I used to play the bass. That guitar is up there because it's a special guitar to me. It was signed by Eddie Money at a charity event. So,
Nice.
There's a long story about that, but karaoke legend, Take Me Home Tonight, and that guitar has a story behind that.
Right on. Right on. Well, yeah, today's topic, how to have empathy and emotional intelligence while selling. Crazy time. I guess I'll start it off with Scott. Scott, my question to you is actually, we talked a little bit about not discounting to get the deal, and you feel pretty strongly about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I wrote about this the other day, but I don't think you have to discount right now. I don't think that showing emotional intelligence and empathy as a salesperson right now equates to slashing your prices at all. I think you can still hold the line. I think some of the, as different as things are right now, some of the best practices in sales still apply. And that is, make sure you're providing value, and make sure that your prospect and your potential customer understands that, the problems that they have, and why they're important to fix, and what ROI is associated with them. And if your solution can be helpful and solve those problems and provide some ROI for them, there is absolutely nothing wrong with with holding firm on the price or the contract term and things like that. And if you are going to, be pressed for some type of discount, then I think you're well within your right to ask for something in return. This could be a case study, or a testimonial, or a PR release, or blog post, or come on our podcast, or whatever it is. But there's nothing wrong with the ask, if you will, if you are getting pressed pretty hard to discount. So I don't think it's something that should be mandatory, and I really hope people don't equate slashing prices with empathetic selling.
I think you bring up a really good point in this environment, because we're all struggling to find ways to keep the lights on, right? Our jobs as salespeople is to get revenue in the door. And when you find folks are in a position where they're saying they don't have the money because of where we're at, you're feeling like it's not okay for you to do what you're supposed to do as a salesperson, to get back to the basics, get back to the fundamentals. Daryl posted about this today. It's a nice little pool video, if you haven't seen that, from Vanilla Soft. Sky, I think you were tagged in this. And he said, look, let's just restart here. Let's restart here, right?
That he and I had. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's funny that you're sparking this everywhere, right? Like, let's get back to where do we understand the problem, the pain, the job to be done that we're here to help with, and quantifying the value that you're bringing to the table. Because as soon as you discount, as Scott said, you're not really serving yourself, and it's your job as a salesperson to be driving in that revenue. You can't be bringing in unprofitable revenue, especially now, right? You're not doing anyone justice. And so getting back to the basics and understanding why you started that conversation in the first place, and trying to quantify the value that you're bringing to the deal is so important. It's always important, but it's so important now because if you're selling a product or service that's really going to help them in a meaningful way, you ought to be able to justify the investment that they're making in a unique way. And discounting is very different than repackaging and being flexible. You can always find unique ways to find different payment options, right? You can add in other things that, like Scott mentioned here too, perhaps adding in those other assets like testimonials and whatnot. But I would actually move away from that and finding ways to just be a little bit more flexible with either payment terms or the price is remaining the same, but you're helping align with whatever their concerns might be, cash flow, etc. And so just being really meaningful or mindful of their situation and getting back to the basics of why they're there in the first place is so important.
I think it comes down to really just that one word of value, right? I mean, we're buying things. If you look at our own consumer habits and behaviors, we're signing off on things we don't need, and we're buying things that are crucial, right? We're getting back to the basics. Our own spending is dropping across this country. Then you go look at a business; they're doing the same thing. They need the stuff that's going to enable their people to do their job. That's going to hit the basics, but they don't need the shiny objects as much. And so we're looking at stuff, and it's really, I think it's about value and illustrating. Scott, you had a great story about a young sales kid coming to you and saying, look, like, I've got this deal. And you basically said, no, you're giving the product away. You don't have a deal because you're not showing the real value. And I think that was one that I'd love to have you riff on, but I think it was interesting to look at that, because I feel the same way on the marketing. It's like, if I don't have a message that adds something, saying, oh, hey, pat on the back, oh, by the way, here's a product I want you to buy, doesn't show real empathy and doesn't actually connect with that buyer.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, go ahead, Jake.
No, that was me. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say, as you go into that story, Scott, because I think it is strong. In the light of the jobs to be done concept. I don't know if you guys follow that. The Harvard jobs to be done interview with your customers. Do you really understand at that point of purchase, and then reverse engineering that back? Telling that story around why the deal wasn't a real deal, and then maybe what you did to help get that across the line, right? And what the traps are around what was the deal that they thought they had versus the deal that ultimately happened. I think that's really important for folks to understand.
Yeah, I mean, not to completely disagree with you, Ryan, but like, yeah, you can certainly get flexible with the payment terms and stuff, but I just want people to know that you don't have to, right? And this particular case, so right now I'm operating as a interim CRO for a company, and there was this kid on the team who, got all excited and came back to me and say, hey, I've got this, mid 5-figure deal, and here's the thing though, like, they don't want to do an annual contract, they want to do a 6-month term. And I'm like, no, we don't do 6-month terms. Yes, I understand that would be, more secure and more flexible for them. That's not what we do here. So, it sounds like you need to go back to the beginning and go kind of back a step in the sales cycle, which a lot of sellers either refuse to do or terrified to do and admit that they need to do. So I told him to go back and try again. And so he got his sales manager to help him, and so they kind of tag team the call. And those guys come back to me and say, "Hey, we came up with this other idea, and it's like free trial for 30 days, kind of incremental payment scale, and pieces a la carte pieces of the product thrown in as extras and whatnot, and then we'll do a annual deal." And I'm like, "No, you guys, you don't have a deal." right now. And they're like, what do you mean? If we don't do this, we're going to lose the deal. And I'm like, no, you won't. You don't have a deal to lose. This is the mistake that sellers have all the time. Like, you're clinging on to something right now. And in this particular case, it didn't even exist. You know, this seller had created something that was not what we were, comfortable. At least I was not comfortable selling. And so I said, look, you got to go back to the beginning here. You got to go back to the beginning, go back to the basics, start with the problem, start with the pains that these people have, right? Articulate it clearly, build up the importance of it, talk about the value in fixing these, and unearth, some urgency here, figure out dollars and cents, what it's costing them. And, then let's go back into the details and the nitty gritty about what it is we do and how we can help them. And the whole sales team got pissed off at me. This is, I'm interim CRO. I'm just helping. Like, I don't have deep relationships with these folks yet. And they're pretty junior in their career. So, they probably thought I was being an asshole and just not trusting them. So I'm like, look, guys, sorry, this is how we're going to operate. Right. So this was like on a Friday. On Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m., a contract came through, full price, full term. This is like a mid 5-figure deal for this kid. It's his first ever deal. He gets like 10% plus on the deal. So he made like a $5,000 or $6,000 commission check. And, he wrote me a little note that was like, I appreciate you, forcing me to go back and do this. So just kind of that's a really specific and recent story. This just happened like maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And to me, it's like, if you've done the job right, then the value should be clear and powerful, and you've articulated it, communicated it properly. So not just the salesperson needing to stand their ground and hold the line, but also you as a sales leader need to do this. And you need to recognize and tie it into, this is real revenue that you are losing for the company or giving away for the company, and real dollars and cents that are coming out of your wallet as a salesperson. And, have that conversation with your reps. Like, look, the average discount is 20% on every deal. If you change that and had no discount, look how much more money you would have earned this year. And a lot of reps, can't do the math or don't do the math to understand that kind of impact. So hopefully that's a relevant story for people.
Scott, I'm interested to know why the original deal with the creativity and the terms was not acceptable versus your standard terms, because that's the piece that I think a lot of folks don't understand when you're like, hey, we don't do that. There's got to be a why, right? There's got to be a why there.
Well, there's a lot of why. It creates operational load on the organization, on my organization, right? Everything from the account management team having like one cohort of contracts that are annual, another cohort that's 6 month or monthly, right? So that creates operational complexity. It sets a potentially dangerous precedent. You guys all know that once a salesperson kind of gets away with doing something, they're going to default back to that. And so that example will be thrown back, in your face. So I was thinking, well, I'm going to end up having everybody come to me saying that we can do 6-month deals now. And that's the only way this is going to be, able to get a deal done. So I was thinking about that and not wanting to set the precedent. And then, the billing and kind of invoicing. This is not like the way this business operates is, it's not like a one-time payment with a credit card. So there's complexity in invoicing. And, just kind of having to explain that to our finance team and everything. I'm just like, no, this is just like too much. And we are the ones as a sales team that are making this mess because we haven't done a good enough job yet. Right. And I think a lot of sellers don't think about that part. They're just thinking like, well, I just need this deal and, I make a mess and everybody else will clean it up. Which I get. Like, when I was young in my career, I had that same mentality, but experience has taught me. And Ryan, I know you've been through multiple exits and growths like this. Man, what matters is the overall impact for the business. Like, there is such a thing as a bad deal. There is such a thing as bad money, right? And so you want to try to stay away from those things to set the business up for success in the long term.
No, it's huge. your point about the operational overhead that we don't even think about as salespeople early in our career until you've actually been responsible for other things outside of getting a deal done. The invoicing in and of itself is a pain in the ass. The collection on those invoices, holy crap, right? And then not to mention, as you mentioned in that flow of just, if you do it once, now you're going to have multiple iterations of that. So like, how do you even track and monitor that? Stuff slips through the cracks. It's such a pain. So thanks for sharing that, Scott. It's something that we don't talk about much.
Well, I think with the alignment across teams too, going back to the operational side, is then you lose trust in the whole system, and then you're getting feedback from a customer that's not your ideal fit. Maybe your products, especially if it's a big customer, maybe it's changing your product roadmap, or now you're bending or changing things to help those. And I think you can have all kinds of issues depending on that size of that client if you really allow them to move, especially in a smaller organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, so it seems like you've instilled, this kind of a culture and mindset as you approach deals, and you took that to your company. It was kind of a shock for them, a different way of thinking. So to me, you really need to be aware of your why, as a seller, and you have to understand that to not give up ground,
Yeah. I mean, it really helps, if you're working for a company that you believe in and a product that you believe in. I think if we were all given some truth serum or a lie detector test, there may be one moment in our lives where we sold a product that we didn't feel, totally perfect about. And again, those are things and mistakes that a lot of people make early in their career. I think I made that mistake more than once, probably. But when you've got a product that actually solves a problem for your prospects and your customers, then you just feel good about what you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. And that why inside of you is, I'm here to help people. I'm here to help these people grow their business, to make their lives easier, less stressful, more lucrative, help them do their job better. That helps them help their staff and team do their job better. And then, that, not to get super like grandiose about it, but, we're all kind of interconnected in one way or the other. And the more people that I can help and the more problems I can solve for people, that karmic kind of circle just comes around. And so that means a lot to me, and that's one of the reasons why I think the best sellers and the best sales leaders, it's one of the reasons they excel, because they truly like solving problems and they truly like helping people. And if you've got a solution that does those things, it's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. It's so big to me. You posted about this recently, Scott. You said, like, if I could go back, right? These are the things. I think maybe it was on a Twitter post. I don't know. I saw your if I could go back, these are the things I would have done. And you talk about that exact point around, do you passionately, genuinely believe in the product or service that you're offering? Like, that has to be number one. It's now more than ever, but it should always be number one if you want to have true success in sales. Because if you don't eat your own dog food, drink your own champagne, you're never going to actually be able to have an impact on your customers the way you would if you were eating your own dog food and drinking your own champagne. It's night and day when you get into those situations where you have to justify value. It's like, I don't even know why we're having this conversation if I believe in it. If you don't, you're coming up with excuses. Well, yeah, they have this concern, that concern, and so that kind of breeds that culture. So taking the step back and, thinking about the organizations that you work for, do you passionately, genuinely believe in the product or service or the future, the vision of that? And I think we get in that trap as if you're a part of startups, because you can get bought into this vision that never actually comes to fruition. And that's hard, right? Because you sell the dream. We're always kind of selling ahead of where we might be, especially in SaaS. And sometimes we never get there. And I think folks run into that trap quite often because they get bitten by, in the beginning, they're drinking the Kool-Aid, they believe in it, and then maybe a deal or two comes through and their customers are upset. That hurts more than anything if you really are somebody that cares about helping people. And so that's a big talking point that I think most sales leaders miss, certainly entrepreneurs miss, when it comes to understanding why their salespeople may or may not be having success. Can we deliver on what we say we can? And that's big.
That ties in pretty nicely. We just got a good question from Aaron Fowler that ties in pretty nicely to his questions. His main question is, what advice would you have to stay confident and stay true to the process? So maybe you could talk about that, Tim and Ryan, in terms of, when you get that first kind of punch to the gut, or the first time the Kool-Aid tastes a little spoiled, right? Like,
tainted. You got the tainted.
I close these deals and I'm feeling good. I'm new to the company, but like, this particular deal I just closed is like having some trouble with the onboarding process, or, I'm following my sales pitch and approach the right way, but the deals are not flowing. I'm curious your guys' take on, what advice you'd give Aaron.
Yeah, so I think from a marketing side, and I think sales can do this as well, is go talk to the customers. Like, go talk, like the minute I'm feeling down a little bit, or like, man, maybe we need this feature, maybe we just don't have that, or whatever it might be. Because I think we all go through those fluctuations, or you see something else out in the market and you're like, man, okay, I like what they're doing. I see how that could help somebody and I want to add that. But go back to your customers and just talk to them and say, hey, why did you buy XYZ product? Like, why are you staying with us for the last 5 years? Why are you expanding licenses and seats? Like, what is this really doing for you? And just try and get into their head, because I always find that energizes and kind of like, it's that recharge on your own batteries to kind of have some more fuel to go back after it sometimes.
Yeah. So to answer the question directly, right? The how do you operate, stay true to the process, right? At the end of the day, sales is a process. Right? You've got to understand where the customer's at in the journey, and where you're trying to take them. And so by Tim's advice there, going back to customers, that's one great way to do it. You can also interview people that have left you. You learn a lot more from those than the ones that actually are still around, because you can understand as an account manager, especially, what are those traps? What are the things that really frustrated them so much that they left you, right? I mean, if someone buys from you, especially if it's a higher ticket item, we're not talking about a transaction, but shit, even small transactions, you get pissed off at brands that for $100 they fall apart on you. You're probably not going to buy from them ever again. Imagine what that's like at a 12 or a 30 or $100,000 investment that just went south. There's a lot of time, energy, and effort in going into making that decision. Your customer doesn't want to go to a competitor. Your customer doesn't want to leave. They just invested a lot of energy into that partnership, that deal. So understanding what are those things that led them to leave, super valuable. And as you understand the process that's in place, what are your levers that you can pull in order to get that customer back on track, so that they're back to that why, right? And so when Scott talked about this earlier in the deal, to reset the value from getting the deal done in the first place, sometimes you have to reset in terms of why we're here in the first place. And customers are upset because they're not investing in the enablement and the things that they need from you. And it's a partnership. We're in this together. I don't think there's any organization out there that offers a product or a service that is 100% plug and play. You can't just automatically get the output from the product or service without the customer committing to their side of the business as well. And so as a salesperson or an account manager, your job in the beginning is selection. Then your job in the afterwards is implementation and success, right? And so how do you continue to make sure that they're on that journey with your process? It's really big. And getting back to the whole, do you passionately, to answer now Scott's question about the taste in your mouth. Look, I've left companies I've started because it gets to a point where what I was trying to deliver and the value that I was trying to deliver was no longer what I was selling, right? The rest of the organization was off track. And even as a leader, I couldn't get things back on. And that's something that I failed at miserably. And I know now more than ever that if leadership isn't on board to go and fix those issues, you're going to have a bad culture and things aren't going to work out the way you hope. And so you've got to be able to rise up and have those conversations if you feel like there's a nasty taste in your mouth, to get the right people involved to figure out, are you off track or is there something else going on? And as soon as you lose that confidence in your ability to deliver, you're never going to really have the same level of success as you would if you're back on that Kool-Aid track. So when you have that bad taste, I highly recommend up leveling it and not letting it go away until you have a real conversation with leadership to understand, do you still want to be around or not? Because as soon as you lose that confidence, you're going to have a hard time serving your customers.
I would add to Aaron's question before we move on to the next one, because he does say that he's brand new to sales. First of all, I think it's very important for you to understand that what you're feeling is something that all of us not only went through when we were first getting started, but are still going through right fucking now today. Okay. So you don't just like solve that and then you're done forever. This is something that you work on, actively. If you're smart, in my opinion, you work on it.
And it does get easier.
Yeah. It only gets easier in the sense that you have more data to rely on to remind yourself that like you'll be okay. Like I've been through more slumps before, so I know I'm gonna get out of it. Right? That kind of. But
you were talking. Sorry, not to interrupt you. You were talking the other day about internal IQ and how important that is too.
Yeah, I mean, just self-awareness, basically, and understanding what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, how to put yourself in a position to succeed properly, and I think be around people and leaders that create a place of safety to have a conversation about this stuff. I would be very, very leery of anybody who tries to say that, you must not be cut out for sales because you're stressed or you're feeling like your self-confidence is taking a little bit of a hit. Like, dude, don't buy those people. They're snake oil. Like we all go through these ups and downs and cycles, right? So, just keep that in mind. We got a good question from Monique that she was talking about, like, if you don't do a good job in the discovery, like how do you fix that? You're the master storyteller, Tim. You want to tackle that one first?
Yeah.
It's interesting. So in the discovery for us, I always try and figure out what they believe in, like what they believe in their workflow should be, or what they believe in. And for us, we work in kind of a lot of sales enablement and sales operations. So that has a big play in it. But if they believe in certain things, then I know they're a good fit. And I think you can go further and have that discovery. If they're not going to value specific things, then for us, like I know that I probably have a lot more work to do on the marketing side, and I should just probably drop that discussion as a salesperson and leave it alone for a while. They don't get it, or they're not seeing that as their what they're trying to solve. So the discovery questions are huge, and we typically go back and forth. Social media is a great place to try out discovery questions and see if you just get people answering or responding. I think it's a good way to pulse your audience. When it comes to the stories, customer stories and finding people that are similar to your customers, I go back to that. Like that is the pool that I try and play in a lot, as I constantly go and say, okay, if this customer is having this issue, who else is having that same issue? Understand that issue, understand that story, and then put them in that story, and try and ask questions that you almost already know some of the answers to, or a good portion of it, because other people in their industry or in companies that are their size, or whatever those factors are that you qualify with. Like they're going to be feeling a lot of these same pain points.
Yeah, I bet if I was to ask Ryan, what is the part of the sales cycle that most reps ask for help on, I bet I know the answer. They all say closing.
Yeah, that's where they're going to say closing.
Yeah.
But
and then Ryan's going to say to them, I bet it has nothing to do with the close, right, Ryan?
It's all in discovery.
It's all in everything else, right?
Yep.
But do you coach your people to go back to the beginning? I mean, I talked about this earlier. That's what I tell people to do.
No, I mean, I think that's something that I've never done, Scott. I thought it was really, I love that idea. It's like, hey, your deal's fucked. Go restart. I've never heard of someone doing that. Like I will start doing that. I'm going to go do that with some of the deals I have right now because it's so smart. It's like, look, we missed something here. Let's get back here. And to my point earlier, the customer isn't going to buy from you unless they believe in the partnership. They're buying from you because they think you're going to help them get somewhere. And if you tell them we missed something, we need this information in order for you to be successful, for this to make sense, they're going to be willing to go back there. If they're not, it's okay to walk away. I think there's a comment that said in there that's okay. But discovery, I don't think it's when you the question here was we didn't ask the right question. I don't think it's necessarily the right question. I don't even know if there is a right question, right? There's no framework on discovery. You can't really script discovery because every conversation is going to be a little bit different. You can have a series of questions that you would like to have answers to so you can understand their situation. But the bigger problem is we're not asking enough questions. It's not the right questions. It's just not enough. We might ask the one question and they answer it and we move on. We don't get deeper. We don't uncover it. We don't get to the real why, and we don't then try to quantify that at the right times.
Because most sellers, or many sellers at least, are just so fixated and focused on their product and what they do, and their own agenda, right?
Yep. And no one gives a shit about that, right? No one gives a shit about your product or your service. All they want to know is, can you actually solve this thing that I have a potential problem around? And so to your point, Scott, where you're like, hey, it's everything else. A lot of this can even start with your targeting, right? And Tim just talked to this. Like you're talking to the wrong people in the first place. You can't fit a square peg in a round hole. We learned that as a toddler. Like you can bang all day long, bang, 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 bang. And sometimes it actually fits in. Sometimes it fits in. That's that shitty customer we were just talking about.
Yeah,
right?
Everything on the way, right? Like, yeah, destroy the toy in the process. And I think going back to it, it's context prior to reaching out. Like I was just telling Scott offline, we were talking on LinkedIn. I said, I just read an article and we sell into and we service professional sports teams. And my heart is out to every professional sports team. I want to reach out to them. I want to talk to them. As a marketer, I got to look at that and say, I got to be really empathetic because they're going through a really tough time right now. I got a solution that I know can help them to some extent, but you also have to unpack all of that around it and the complexities of even if they were going to buy that solution or even if they were going to need to solve that challenge right now, like where are they at? What are they feeling? And it could even be the perfect target market to go into because you have customers, but not right now because of the timing. I think that's some of the stuff prior, like with the list selection, with the stories around who we go after and who we talk to and the discovery questions. Like you got to really know who you're trying to sell into. And we're too much spam everybody, send 1 million emails off to anybody in our ICP list on Zoom info. And, we'll pick up whatever we get on the line and try and reel it in quickly. I think that's the difference in a lot of these.
No, another reason I like the concept of going back to the beginning in the deal or going back steps and stages is because, like what Ryan was saying, we missed something here. A lot of the times the prospect can't identify or pinpoint like what was missed. And a lot of times the seller can't pinpoint it either. It's just a feeling that, something's off. The seller knows something's off because the prospect's not asking enough questions. The prospect knows something's off, but doesn't quite know why. Maybe they missed a particular concept earlier. I can remember being in like 8th grade geometry class or 7th grade geometry class or something like that. And like, I did not understand, what was taught on Monday. And coming Tuesday, they started teaching something on the back of what happened on Monday. And this whole situation just compounded itself. And I'm like, fuck me, how am I ever going to, sort this out? I literally can't do this lesson. Like I have to go back to chapter 1 and start all over. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to articulate that to the teacher at the time. So I think going back to the beginning, it can just help bring clarity to both the seller and the buyer over what was missed. It gives you an opportunity to kind of re-hammer home some pain points and some value propositions and so forth, and get extra detail and clarity around things. And then there's going to be, an aha moment or two, right? Inevitably, you start going back through things and the prospect's like, oh, yeah, I don't understand that part. and they didn't ask that question the first time through, or they didn't admit it the first time through, and now they're seeing it again or having that conversation again. Now they're asking about it. So I like going back, for some of those reasons.
Scott, is that asking better open-ended questions, do you think, or is it just continuing the conversation and having more thorough conversations?
No, they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, better questions the first time through might have avoided, having to go back at all, right? If you do have to go back and you go back and deliver the exact same pitch with the same exact questions, you might not get that different of an answer. So I think you do have to get a little better at your questions. You got to get better at listening. You might have to push and probe a little harder, right? If you're not getting the feedback that you are used to on your demos, like that's a clue something's off. So press them, try to figure out what's not making sense, or you can say stuff like, this is usually the part of the conversation where people pepper me with questions. That hasn't happened yet, so I must be really sucking right now in my demo, right? So any of that kind of stuff to just kind of get them engaged.
Yeah, dialogue. Yeah, at the end of the day, open that up.
Yeah, I love the math examples, Scott, because I have a math degree, right? That's what I studied in college, but in 7th, 8th grade, same exact course you're talking about. That's when you move away from like basic multiplication, that type of math to algebra. So you could do the algebra. Now, when you get to geometry, it's algebra plus, all that stuff starts to stack on itself, and you realize that, holy shit, if I don't understand this, I'll never understand that. And it all built on itself. Math in general is literally from a basic set of 3 principles around common believed truths. And that's how you count, what a positive is, what a negative is. Everything else is proven from that particular element forward. And it's the same in sales, right? You have a process for a reason, and you do it in an order of operations for a reason. And if you don't understand something, you've got to be able to go back and master that skill set. That's why the fundamentals are so key. And your element on the demo piece, I was about to say that our top seller at Connect and Sell, Seth he's so good at what he does because he's really passionate. He believes in what he does. But when he's in the first part of the conversation and someone isn't like really excited after he's given the first part of discovery and getting into the first piece, he'll literally say, look, we can just get off the phone right now, because right now, if you're not excited, I don't think you understand what we do. And he's more direct about that, but it works so well for him because he's just going right at it. Like something's missing, and it opens up that conversation, right? It opens it up to allow you to go back and understand what's going on. All of us aren't as confident as someone like Seth. Seth's got a lot of that in the world. So to your point, you can make it a little bit more on you. You can get them laughing, but the reality is if you don't get that information, you really shouldn't be moving forward. And unfortunately, we get happy ears. I do it all the time. I get happy ears. All right, you didn't have any questions. Let's go. Because I get so fired up on what I'm doing, and that's a big mistake, right? If you're not getting that engagement, and I'll stop talking in just a second. But then the other thing to note is there's different personalities, right? Every single person has a different personality, and so you've got to be able to adjust. We talked about emotional intelligence, and was maybe something we can get into if we have time here, but you've got to be aware of who they are, and you also have to be aware of how you react to who they are. And that's all coming out through that dialogue. It's all coming out through those conversations, and no two customers are the same. And in fact, you might even have multiple personalities in one call, and you've got to be able to get around that, right? So I think that all of that is why sales is so complex. It's not a robotic motion. There's an art and a science that we're playing with here, and a lot of that has to do with how you're bringing emotion to the process.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. We have a question here about the first 20 seconds. What would you say in the first 20 seconds of a cold call to keep a potential client from hanging up on you? Tim, any thoughts?
Oh, I got to push this to Ryan because I actually know what he's going to say, and I like his answer. And he's
nice.
This is the Connect and Sell answer. Come on.
Yeah, well, so we have something called the breakthrough script. So, I know I'm an interruption. Can I have 27 seconds to tell you why I'm calling? That's the very simple intro that we use at Connect and Sell, and it actually works pretty well. Now, keep in mind that there's a portion of your audience that will hang up no matter what you say. So understanding, your math of sales, as we say, is important here. But that's how we enter every single conversation.
I want to take this in a little bit of a different direction, and that direction for Krista is you are worrying about optimizing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
There is no silver bullet to keep people from hanging up on you in the first 20 seconds or 60 seconds. Like no disrespect to Ryan's script, but you heard what he said. There's going to be people who hang up no matter what. So you can't optimize. You should lose no sleep over the first 10 to 20 seconds of your pitch, right? What matters the most is when you've got somebody who does engage with you, what are you saying then? That's what matters.
I would
matter all the people.
I'll piggyback on that, Scott, because that's you're making that point in a way that in a way that I was hoping I was saying by saying, hey, look, they're gonna hang up anyway. But you're 100% right. The most important thing on the start of the call is that you are confident, you come in with the right tone, and you get someone to engage enough to give you more information. And so it doesn't matter what you say, so long as you get to that next phase of the conversation. That's so important. And again, one more thing: if they hang up, don't leave that lead, and don't feel like you're never going to be able to engage them again, because you don't know what was going on their side. They could have been having a terrible day. You can follow up with that individual, and they'll have a total different approach. So
Also,
two things to learn from there. Exactly, they won't remember you.
They won't even remember if they hung up on you last time or not.
No.
Nope.
Yeah.
All right.
I think the big thing too is just wrapping that around context. I know for Ryan's team, you guys use call lists that are kind of scripted to saying, hey, we're going to go for this role in this industry. I think knowing who you're calling, for us, it's, we pop all the information inside of Salesforce to try and help that call. It's whatever it is putting the context around why that person that you're asking them to call somebody, like, why are they calling? If they know that, then you can probably have a pretty good discussion if they do give you the chance to have a call. If you're just calling at random and you don't actually know in your own head why you're calling the person, like that is a fundamental issue that just happens, that you're like, come on, you got to get over that.
Yeah. We've been talking about that earlier around discovery, right? Solve a problem. Someone used the quote there: solve a problem or go away. It's the same. I mean, that's exactly what it's all about, right? Passionately, genuinely believe that I might be able to help you. I might be able to. I don't know yet. You have to have the conversation first. So what is that why, and solve that problem or go away. So you need to know, if that person picks up the phone, what is the reason for that conversation. And if you don't have something of value, there's not going to be a conversation to be had, period. So learning how to build the appropriate lists, right? Your list is your strategy. And make sure that your message is relevant, right? It has to align with them in terms of their company as well as their role. And if you're not messaging in that way, you're not going to have any success either, right? Yeah.
So, a really good question by Ben here is: some sales leaders say they want to hold a discovery meeting with anyone in their ICP versus increasing pre-qualification, prior to a first meeting. So, what are your thoughts on top of the funnel qualification best practices?
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I would ask for a little bit more clarity, because I want to know what the word anyone means. Like, does that mean any contact in that particular account? Because by nature, you're saying that anyone is in the ICP. So if they're in the ICP, are you now talking about distinguishing inside of the ICP, like who's higher, like who's higher on the heat map? Like, this guy's got a 97 heat score and this other one's got a 95. like I mean, maybe I'm just like old and don't worry about this kind of stuff or can't understand it, but like I spend no time stressing about that type of thing. So as long as I know that this account is my ideal customer profile, I'm not worried about like calling the one with a heat score of 96 versus 92. I'm just going to pick up the phone or go through my cadence and hit them up. So I see your note that you sell to the VP of HR in the right industry and in the right company size. So I don't know, maybe we'll hear from Ryan on it, but I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
Yeah, I think what this goes back to. Well, first of all, you're nailing it, Scott. I'm taking it this way, right? You're defining your ICP as the companies. So in this case, right company size and right industry, and then you're actually layering in a persona within ICP, which ideal customer profile. Your customer is the actual company, right? And then you target companies, you sell to people. So who within those organizations do you want to talk to? And so to Scott's point, if the company is someone we want to do business with because we know we can help them for some reason, it really doesn't matter, the role of the organization that we're starting a conversation with, so long as they may influence a decision. Or are you saying that you only want to talk to those that meet specific criteria, like sign the check, right? So there's a lot of conversation there. What I always try to help people understand is that basic concept of target companies, sell to people, right? The company is your customer. Within those organizations, there's a series of individuals that may be involved in the deal, may be able to influence the deal, ultimately sign the check on the deal, right? So when you're thinking about the question, then as I hear it is, some people will take a meeting with anybody that meets whatever that criteria was versus others will want to have some sort of qualification. For the top of the funnel, your job is to get the interest and get that meeting set up. And that should be your only job. That whole qualification having an expert join that conversation, if you're not the expert responsible for getting that meeting, you're wasting that customer's time, because that handoff process is always broken. You're going to go back and re-ask questions that probably already answered, right? And so my best practices to answer the question here is, this is just my own belief, is target the, clearly define the companies and the titles or roles within those companies, because sometimes titles can be, weird. And so long as that's a positive, get the meeting with the expert, right? Put that expert in front of that person as soon as possible, because that's the job of the top of the funnel, just like in marketing. I want to get that interest. And the only qualification I should care about is, you are a company I believe I can help, and you are a part of my process somewhere. At that point, put the expert involved, because you're giving the buyer a shitty experience if you're going to go and ask them a bunch of questions before someone else who can provide some value in that conversation is there to exchange that value enough to get that information in the first place.
Yeah,
that's my personal opinion on it.
One of the things that I've learned and experienced is that as much as you need to sell to the VP of HR, that person's influence is different from organization to organization, right? And the way they operate is different. I've sold some things to the VP of HR before, and the director underneath the VP was actually the person that I was selling to, and the VP just had to put a signature on it, and I never even talked to them before. So it's a difference between do you sell bottoms up or tops down? And I urge people to not be rigid with that. I think if you're only trying to sell to, who you think the ultimate decision maker is, and you don't accept any conversation or dialogue with anybody else in that account, I would not operate that way. I think you're going to lose opportunities that way. You're just trying to break into the account. I'm just trying to get into the account somehow. I will have a full-blown conversation with the office manager if I have to try to turn the office manager into some type of internal champion for me. And if nothing else, the office manager might just be like, Hey, I had this really funny conversation, this really good conversation with this dude, Scott, who was talking about XYZ problem. Like, I think you should talk to him. Like, it seemed pretty interesting. That one phone call that I had with an office manager could allow me to keep moving up the food chain. And you don't know, like, that office manager could hold so much power and sway in the organization, right? Or the sales manager that you talk to before you get to the VP of sales, or the VP of marketing that you talk to before you have to deal with the CFO who's actually writing the check. So sometimes you work an account bottom up, sometimes you do it top down. The point is, you just got to crack into the account one way or the other.
Yeah,
It's all about conversations. Sorry, Tim.
It's true. No, but I had a life story. One of my first jobs out of college, I was doing what they said was PR, but was really just door-to-door relationship management, sales to basically doctors. And it was your radiology practice. You're knocking on doors. You needed to get your scripts, right? Your basically MRI requests or CTI requests get filled out by the doctors. You're never going to talk to a doctor, especially not at 21 years old. Couldn't grow facial hair. I was done for. There's no way. I walk in. They're like, who are you? Nope, out. All the office admins, they were the ones that actually controlled what pads of paper the doctor grabbed every time they did an MRI or a CT. You started to find that out, started to understand who influenced the decision. And I think it's the same thing. How do you help those people share your story with the people that maybe make the decision? How do you help empower those people to tell a story that's going to click? Because we're seeing salespeople get pushed further and further back in the buying and decision-making process, right? The more we can educate the company, the more we can get the SDRs, the AEs, everybody say, wow, we want this tool. Look at the value this tool has. And then also have a sales message that goes to the economic buyer and the people that are doing those buying jobs. Then you're winning. Then that's why account-based marketing, account-based sales is winning. That's why we're seeing people take a more focused approach to key accounts. And I think it's why you're seeing certain brands really succeed, because they are talking to every person in that organization, the person that uses it, the person that's going to have to deal with the challenges and issues, and the person that's going to have to write the check and possibly put, some of their career or their credibility on the line when they write that check. So that's my 2 cents from kind of just personal experience, and finding out that office admin, like Scott was saying, can sometimes be that critical person to build buy-in.
Yeah. Tim Murray is on the chat talking about building a consensus, and he's right. Like, the more complex the sale, the more complicated the product and implementation, the larger the cost. More people are going to be in the mix in that buying process and decision. So you might have to sell 4 or 5 different department heads on this, right? Maybe you have a revenue solution, and you got to get the VP of sales, the VP of marketing, and the VP of customer success all on board, right? Well, to Ryan's point, like, those are 3 different personas. So you're going to probably have to sell to each of them a little bit differently, right? And you got to ask questions and have conversations with each of them. You might have to start with people who are working underneath them that bubble it up onto their plate. But each of those personas is different. I mean, what's a persona of a VP of sales? Driver, director, right? Tim, you're in marketing. What's the persona of a VP of marketing?
Oh yeah, all over the board, but metrics, right? Some brand, some direct. I mean, it depends, but yeah.
So when you don't know for sure, what do? Yep. Well, you have a fucking conversation with them, and you talk to as many people as possible, right? Let's say that I'm ultimately trying to sell Tim, and Jake and Ryan, work underneath him, right? So I'm trying to, get Jake to understand, but I'm also trying to learn a little bit about Ryan and about Tim. And then by the time I'm talking to Ryan, I'm trying to, learn a little bit more about Tim as well. Like, what does your boss look for? How do you guys typically operate? Have you ever purchased anything? Have you ever succeeded in purchasing something that you wanted and got it past Tim? What did you do? How did you get it past him? Right? Yeah. I'm on your team here. Like, how do we both achieve our desired goal here? And then by the time I'm talking to Tim, I've had advice from 2 people who work for him on how he thinks, how he operates. I know a little bit maybe about what their buying process and cycle looks like. So that's some thought there.
Pretty much connecting, as a human to human, you're putting yourself in their shoes and understanding, what their pain points are, what their goals are, what they're interested in. And then you're connecting, from your point of view.
Yeah.
I think we all have content. We all have something to sell. Then it's saying, okay, what's the context and what's the reason why that person's going to sell and why it matters to them and why it's going to add value. And the more we can connect to those two, the better off we are.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're approaching the end here. A couple more minutes left. Any other questions we can clear up? Feel free to shoot them. Tim, account-based marketing.
That's what I live by. I've
Ah.
been trying so hard.
Ding, ding, ding.
To currently transition our company right now to really that account-based approach, and getting everybody on board with it is tough. Being more less focused on MQLs and more focused on putting 100 accounts on the board and saying we really want to work with these people and earning their business is more the way I like to go about it. Hard things to change sometimes and definitely tough to shift. I actually appreciate COVID to some extent because it's given us the opportunity to really kind of look at everything we're doing events wise and digital and all that and kind of reassess, which is I think a good time for everybody to take some downtime too and think through things a little bit right now.
Awesome. Guys, if we want to continue the chat, there's a Q&A in Huva. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for your time. It's been fun.
See you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.
Thanks.